Hello and welcome to Binge of the Week. I'm Sonia, aka Binge of the Week. Today's episode, welcome to Jurassic Parks. No quips here, just calling it like it is. And starting off on the saddest note possible, Sam Neill died last week. So of course, I went into watching Sam Neill movies, because how else would I deal with anything? And I actually started with Wimbledon. And while I won't be doing a Wimbledon episode of the podcast, although I might do a rom-com episode of the podcast, I am not really into rom-coms, and there are just a few that I truly love. Wimbledon is one of them. I think he's fantastic in that, even though he's just playing the dad, but he doesn't just do anything. And that has to be past tense. He didn't just do anything. I am deeply saddened that he died because he was such an incredibly kind person. And I think we all knew this. And I think COVID and his post from lockdown really let people see him, which is funny because I don't think he was one of those people who was into celebrity culture. I'm not into celebrity culture. I don't think he was wanting to be seen the way some celebrities do. But seeing him and his farm and his animals and his land was very helpful to a lot of people, including me. And I think also he was a great actor. And I think the best thing about him is that that's probably the third thing you can say. First, you'd say he was a great human. Then you might talk about his love of animals, and then how great an actor he was. So I went from Wimbledon, which I was hoping would be more cheery as a way to see his work, but I still cried. And then I went into Jurassic. And honestly, it's July as I record this, so I'm almost past due my yearly, well, actually biennial viewing of Jurassic, because I watch it every summer and I watch it every Halloween. And I lived in LA for a decade, and I used to go see it on a big screen every summer because there were always screenings, and sometimes even in the fall. So I've seen this movie way too many times. It's never enough. And I started with Jurassic and thought I'll watch all three, because he's in the third one. It'll be good for the podcast to do the trilogy. I didn't want to get into doing the entire franchise because I kind of reserve a binge watch of the franchise for the fall. So I will be doing that at some point. But I thought I would at least get to the third one because I wanted extra Sam Neill time. And as I watched the first one, I worried a little that this podcast might need to be just about that, because I could talk forever about Jurassic Park. As I'm sure it might be true for a lot of millennials, it is the first movie I can remember seeing. And I didn't see it in theaters. I'm pretty sure my memory is accurate, although I'm never 100% sure about childhood memories. And that I saw it at a friend's house, probably when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I was growing up in Italy at the time, so I would not have seen it right when it came out in America. And it definitely stuck with me. And I think it stuck with a lot of people. And I think that's probably part of why Sam Neill not being around anymore is so hard, is he's so iconic and such a part of our growing up in our lives that it's hard to not have him in the world anymore, which is often what happens with people that are iconic. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a lot about my favorite hill to die on, which is Jurassic Park is a horror. And regular listeners to the podcast will know this. I do not think horror is a genre. It is a category. Genres have rules, and horror does not have rules. It has genres within it that have rules. And I would call this movie a creature feature. And That does not mean it is not also a sci-fi, and it is not also action and also adventure. It is a lot of things. Movies can be more than one category, and you can feel free to disagree with me, but it will always be a horror first and foremost to me. It's got a big scary monster. It's got a lot of horror parts, and I do love a creature feature. But watching these, binging these back to back for the podcast and live threading them, what I discovered was an even bigger hill to die on, a more fun hill to die on, which is that they are all in their own right good movies of different categories. And the first one is a horror, the second is an action thriller, and the third one is a comedy horror. And that's what I love about this franchise. These movies that are all their own thing, their own dino flicks, as I'm just going to refer to them from now on. And this franchise does start with this masterpiece. It is perfect. I love Jurassic. And I have more than one Jurassic Park tank top. I have dressed up a bit to go to screenings with a bandana around my neck and a flannel shirt. So I'm definitely a fan. I'm not a book reader, so let's get that out of the way. A lot of people talk to me about the book, and I'm like, that's great. I have not read the book. It should always be known on this podcast that I think books and movies and these adaptations are two separate canons, two separate things, two pieces of art. They work in their own merit. They have to, because they are different forms of storytelling. So it starts with this masterpiece. And then I think my biggest thing with this, my real hill to die on, is you want to enjoy this? Let go of that. Let go of what a masterpiece the first one is and enjoy the other ones for what they're trying to do. Because you're not going to crank out 3 or 7 masterpieces of filmmaking. You just aren't. Let's be very realistic about one IP supplying that kind of filmmaking. It would be nice. It's nice to aspire to, but even if it were just this trilogy, it's very hard to get a trilogy to function on the level of making 3 Jurassic Parks. And you can all at me with what trilogy you think mastered making 3 masterpieces that live as some of the best movies of all time, all 3 of them. And I appreciate them for what they do, even though they're not the masterpiece that the first one is. So letting go of that is, I think, a key here for me. You just let go of what the first one is, and you enjoy this trilogy for what it actually can supply in entertainment. And for someone like me who wants to podcast about it, this great vehicle for exploring how movies evolved from the early 90s to the early aughts, and what each of its categories, or if you want to call them genres can do, does do, and what success looks like inside of that type of movie. And look at all of the different kinds of dino flicks we can make. We don't just have to make Jurassic Park and this like one kind of movie. We can make different kind of movies inside of this one universe. And that's what I appreciate about these 3 movies and watching them back to back, essentially. So instead of looking like at the 3 movies individually, I'm going to try to look at the elements of them per movie. So let's start with the cast. Obviously, the cast is foundational in the first one, and I would say the casting is perfection in the first movie. Obviously, I think 2 and 3 are very good, and 1 sets that up for everything else because we do have returning characters, but the first one has, of course, Sam Neill as Alan Grant. Alan, who is just this walking green flag intellectual hero, and he's not your Indiana Jones hero who wants to run around and explore. He's a scientist who wants to sit there and do science and gets thrust into this situation, which I think is really funny that Spielberg wanted Harrison Ford for this role And Harrison had the insight and self-awareness to know that this was not his role. And he said, no, thank you. And I adore him for that because I think Harrison Ford is amazing. Love him, love his work, love Indy. But Sam Neill is the better choice for this. There's just something softer about him. There's something, I don't know if the word is congenial, but there's just something a little less gruff and your stereotypical heroic kind of vibe that you get with a Harrison Ford. It really is more intellectual and soft and sweet. It's just like that moment, right, where Alan is in just the background and Ellie says the thing about women inheriting the earth and his warm smile looking at her. I'm not saying that Harrison couldn't pull that off, but there is something special about Sam Neill in this role. And, of course, Jeff Goldblum. Malcolm is one of my favorite things about Jurassic Park 1. And he's like this bad boy scientist, hilarious. It's got a lot of parallels for me with Independence Day, where they play him off a little less sexy in the start of the movie, but as it goes on, they kind of let that come out more and more with hair and wardrobe. And I think the two movies line up for me too much with that. It's just like this funny, like, oh, we'll play him for more of his dorky qualities at the start. And then as it goes on, obviously here it's a little more outward that he's kind of this bad boy scientist. But I think open shirt later on, it's all a lot more aggressive as the movie unfolds. And you've got Richard Attenborough lending this sweet, soulful quality to a billionaire who's just doing what he can do because he can do it. And yet he lends so much empathy to this character, and you really believe that he wanted to do it because of good reasons, even though it's a terrible idea. And then we have Laura Dern as the final girl. And so many of her scenes really cement the horror of this. I mean, her, right before she turns on the flashlight in that metal hallway at the top of the stairs is such a horror moment. An entire scene of her down there and finding an arm and getting attacked by the raptors, or the way she tells herself, wills herself to run towards Alan. She gets a lot of the moments, or her shrieking in the Jeep, like the horror shriek. But she is your ultimate final girl. And I think that comes back as an element in the third movie, for sure. And so many others. I mean, you've got Wayne playing this like villainous IT guy, such an amazing character. And Bob Peck. Oh my goodness. Honestly, watching this, I realized like, oh, Bob Peck and Richard Attenborough and Sam Neill are all gone. And it is such a treasure trove of these brilliant actors that did such an amazing job in this one movie that are all gone. Obviously, thank God that Laura and Jeff are still with us. But Bob Peck is so amazing at Muldoon and imbuing this character with so much given so little. Like, you understand this guy so deeply from so few scenes. He gets one of the best lines. I think Clever Girl might be, I don't know if it's the most quoted. There's an insane amount of quotes in this movie, and we will get to that because there is just such great character work in this first movie. It really excels at having a lot of scenes where the characters are just talking. There's great character work and great dialogue. The dialogue in this is sickening, to be honest, whether it's monologues or just the discussions being had between Malcolm and Hammond. All of these amazing things that Jeff Goldblum gets to say. And Jeff Goldblum is the perfect casting for this because it's hard to believe that anyone would have been able to lend the very specific gravitas that his very unique cadence lends to these lines, where he says things like, you got so preoccupied with whether you could that you didn't stop to wonder whether you should. It would still be a great line if someone delivered it dramatically. Like if you had an Alec Baldwin, that would sound very dramatic because I've always thought of Alec Baldwin as this like deliverer of lines that makes everything sound more dramatic than it is. And it's always just like dripping with this weird gravitas. But I actually think it's more effective to have it in this very specific cadence that is so unique that it makes you listen. There are so many lines that Jeff Goldblum gets in this movie that are so brilliant, between life finds a way and explaining chaos theory, that land specifically well because he doesn't just say it the way everybody else would. And I think that the discussions between these characters, I mean, people would like to tell me, well, like you think it's a horror, but it's really an action adventure. I mean, let's be real. It's a lot of things. It's not only a horror. Like when I say that stuff, I'm being a little bit facetious in the sense of like, I know it's not just a horror, but there's so much philosophy and discussion in this movie. There's a lot of quiet scenes of characters talking, and everything in Jurassic 1, all of this, the characters, the casting, the dialogue, is so top tier that every one-liner, I mean, it's too many quotes. It's too many great ideas and philosophical ones, deep, deep stuff being said in this movie. And I think really the ranking is like, of course, 1 is above all these 3 movies. It's just like in its own league. And then I would actually say that 3 works the next best when it comes to the casting and characters and dialogue. I do think that the Kirbys are very effective, and Sam Neill being back in the 3rd one is a very big deal because I think he's just a better character to carry an entire film. Even though I love Jeff Goldblum and I love Malcolm, I think to carry the main arc of the story, Alan works better. And there's just more there connected to the island and connected to dinosaurs, where really in the 3rd one, you're getting this very specific character arc where it's a silly movie. Like, I am calling it a comedy horror. It is silly, and it must be viewed as such. I think a lot of the problem that people have with this 3rd movie is that they want it to be Jurassic Park 1, but it is being played for the comedy. That's what we're here for. But underneath it, there's still this really very real arc that Alan is going through, where he loved dinosaurs and then kind of hates dinosaurs and is learning through this new traumatic experience to process his original trauma from the 1st one and rediscover his love of dinosaurs via this child that he's helping to rescue, and also these new experiences and working with Billy. I do think the characters work overall because I kind of like Udetsky as this mercenary. I love the Kirbys, even though everyone seems to hate Amanda, and I'm here to take a stance on Amanda Kirby. Yes, she's annoying. Yes, she uses the megaphone and it's a really dumb thing to do on an island with dinosaurs, but that's the point. She's a suburban mom on an island with dinosaurs, and I will remind everyone that as much as people by the 3rd movie kind of believe this happened, because in the 2nd movie, the general public does not believe it, it really doesn't dawn on people what that means. Like, if you took your average person and took them out there, they would act a fool. They would. And they would be so wrapped up in the experience that they would ignore Alan, even if they'd spent all this energy tricking him into the situation. Like, people hate her for using the megaphone. I'll tell you, you should hate Billy for being a dinosaur expert and stealing eggs from a raptor. I think he's by far the most annoying character of the entire movie. But again, the Kirbys, Billy, everyone's here to kind of frustrate Alan as he's trying to navigate this place once again. And the 3rd movie is this thing where regular people are now on this island. the other ones, there are people who are highly trained or experts in their field, and they're getting into it mostly knowingly or in some capacity understanding what's going on. While this third one, like, yeah, the Kirbys are desperate to get their kid back. They think they know there's a problem, but if she really thought that the island was as deadly as it is, she wouldn't have let her kid go. I think you have to forgive these characters a little bit because the point is they're ill-equipped for the situation. And I think when people get like really serious about I can't watch this movie because I can't stand them, like, look, I'm not going to police anyone. They are annoying, but it's funny if you are in on the joke, which again, the whole movie, it's a horror comedy. And it is not meant to be that serious. Like, the reason she's using a megaphone is because it's cartoonishly funny. And Alan's like, are you kidding me? Like, that's genuinely funny that she's using a megaphone on an island with dinosaurs, if you let go of the fact of how realistic this could be. But I think any panicked mom might do something like that. So for me, these characters do work better as a cast than in the second movie, where I'm happy to see Malcolm, and at least we get a little bit of Hammond. But I'm not really sold on all of them. I mean, you've got terrific actors. The cast is great. And I'm not in any way knocking the cast of The Lost World. You've got Julianne Moore and Pete Postlethwaite and Peter Stormare, who, honestly, I can't wait to do an Armageddon episode because I love me some Peter Stormare. So there's this great cast. It's just the character work for me falls short of the other two movies. And the dialogue also a little less. It's a much bigger, we've got this, like, we're doing an action thriller, and it's starting to get that big, more set pieces, less dialogue. I think actually, surprisingly, the third one pulls back a little bit and has a little more of the dialogue kind of beats, but you're taking a step away from what happened in the first one. And in the second one, you're just like going bigger, which works in some ways, but I think the character work suffers. And as much as I love Julianne Moore, this is not her fault. People are annoyed with Amanda Kirby in the third one. Are you kidding? Sarah might be the worst written character of all three movies, because this is an animal expert who takes a baby T-Rex back to your home. Like, home, the trailer. That's insane. And no amount of, oh, she got caught up in the moment excuses that kind of behavior. Like, that's asking to get killed behavior, which we will get into later, of the repercussions of that. So anyone who's out of pocket about Amanda, I do get a little bit worried that there's, for all of us, including me, a staunch feminist, sometimes some level of residual tinge of internalized misogyny, where people seem really annoyed with Amanda, but not annoyed by her husband, who's also inept, the mercenaries who are inept, Billy, who is being the worst, and everyone's hating on her, but not on them. And I'm like, let's all just pull back and ask ourselves, like, is Amanda really any worse than these guys that she's with? Because my answer is no. And as a suburban mom, she's pretty badass letting a raptor get up all in her business and kind of have this moment where, again, the third one has this like weirdly good character work happening for a movie that is so silly, because the raptors are looking for their kid. They want their eggs. She's a mom looking for her kid. They are on the journey parallel to each other. One is a threat to the other for the same reason that they are even here. And I think that's actually some really clever writing for a movie that I will say is silly. Like, I'm never going to say the third one isn't silly, but that's why it's good. The next lens I would look at all these movies through is pacing. And of course, one is always going to win. Every category. I'm saying it's a perfect movie. Where this is interesting is, like, one is perfectly paced. It's a long movie. I think it clocks around 2 hours, but it is just so well timed. I feel none of it, and I would keep watching another 2 hours of this. But this is another place where Jurassic Park 3 outranks The Lost World, because The Lost World, look, It's a very good movie. I'm not saying it is, and I love it. I think other people love it as well. But I do think the third act is like a little bit of a mess. And you've got like false endings and then just like a weird shift. I think for me, the hardest part of Lost World is I would cut the entire raptor scene that's happening in the buildings because it starts with this amazing raptor scene in the tall grass, and that is iconic, and I love it. And then when we get to the gymnastics portion of the movie, I'm like, please don't do this. Which is funny because 3 is sillier than this movie, but that's where this doesn't feel like it's in its place. Like if this gymnastics scene happened in the third one, I would probably enjoy it and laugh. But because it's happening in the second movie and that's not the tone of the movie, I kind of dislike this scene and I wish I could cut it. But yeah, from that moment on, I'm like, are we good? Like, what are we still doing here? And I kind of like and enjoy the whole what if we brought the T-Rex over to San Diego bit. I just don't know that it belongs in the movie. Like, it's another movie. All of a sudden, I feel like I'm watching an extra bit, just like a short film about something that happened. So, I don't know. It gets messy for me with the pacing of this one, where the third one isn't without fault either, because there's almost this like abrupt ending. All of a sudden, it's over. And I kind of love it because I love that abrupt ending. I think Ellie being able to call in the Navy and the Marines and this whole like comedic beat of her being able to do that, her going to the absolute ends of what a person would do and move heaven and earth for Alan is fantastic. And I just like that they're imbuing my final girl with this much power in the end. Like, she can end this. She's the final girl. She's the one who can call it. She's going to stop the horrors from happening. And it is kind of out of nowhere. Like, all of a sudden they're on the beach and the army's here and we're all done. But I would call that a lesser pacing sin than what happens in the Lost World. So I do enjoy it. And I do love and appreciate a tight 90, especially from this era of filmmaking. And where I'd go next is looking at effects and animatronics, because that is so important to these movies. Jurassic Park, to this day, when people watch it and they talk about it, it does age well because it still looks so spectacular. And I think that's due to this 90s, early 90s era of CGI still being this thing that's being used to enhance what's already an effect on the ground or do what is not possible at all to do. Obviously, like, the T-Rex chase scene has to be CGI, but any scene that can be done practically is done practically. And the practical effects are so beautiful. And seeing the animatronics of these dinosaurs is so important. And definitely for me, this is where we fall into 1 is the best, 2 is the next best, third one is the worst. Because Lost World still really stuck with these amazing animatronics. There's the scene in Lost World where the T-Rex dips their head into the tent and is breathing over Sarah. And there's something about that being a real thing in the space with her. You can feel the weight of that thing being real in the room with her. It is just such an argument for never doing CGI when you can avoid it to this day. Even today, if you got the best CGI in the world, I don't even care if it's that realistic AI looking stuff. You can never replicate the feeling of that being in the room with her. It is so visceral. And I would put that against any effect that could be done. And I think the decline of CGI happened after this, where CGI became this cost-cutting method and really actually started to affect how movies were written, because the brilliance of a Jurassic Park 1, the OG, is that there's not that many scary set pieces. A lot of the movies, the characters just talking or going through these horror beats or having philosophical discussions. And it's kind of something that came up when I talked about Superman last week. I remember someone commenting that their favorite scene was Lois and Clark talking, and they wish that movies did this more. I think a lot of action or superhero or any of these kinds of movies have gotten too heavy on the set piece side because things are so easy to do now with CGI that they've lost the balance. And I say that as someone who loves action, loves set pieces. I mean, I think the best set piece of this trilogy is Lost World, where you have them in the trailer. The trailer scene is, again, because it's a practical effect, is insanely tense to watch. You can feel that glass cracking under her hands. Another Sarah moment that drives me crazy because she's a scientist who doesn't know that you should distribute your body weight over something that's like ice or glass instead of putting all of your body weight on one palm. But I digress. That feeling of that trailer flipping over with them in it is so important into why that scene feels so tense. Really doing stunts in a real environment is so important to things feeling real, but also aging well. And all of these movies have that. The third one the least, though, because you do start to get to this like level where it's 2001. They definitely, I think the budget was bigger for this, but it feels like they did a rush job as far as I understand about how long they had to get this done. And they just did this over-reliance on CGI. I also think that even though I love animatronics, the Spinosaurus animatronic does not work as well as the others. I'm not sure if it was the size or what, but there's something almost cartoonish about that whole animatronic scene with the plane at some points. There's just too much CGI in the third one and an over-reliance on it. And you are getting to the era of cost-cutting via CGI, where I will give it credit is that it uses the CGI for that like big sweeping scene with all the Brachiosauruses. And I think where it beats The Lost World is that The Lost World never really for me achieves a single moment of like ooh, ah, and the wonder. Like the only time where Malcolm arrives with Vince Vaughn, I don't remember his character's name, and Eddie, R.I.P. Eddie is like one of the harshest deaths of the entire trilogy. I think they're having this like ooh ah moment, but he interrupts it with his quip about like it always starts with ooh ah and then they're screaming. We love that line, but I don't feel anything during that like oh my God, dinosaurs, because you're always supposed to have that oh my God, dinosaurs moment. And I think for me, we actually achieve it in the third one, even though the people who are seeing the dinosaurs have already seen them, but they're seeing them in this idyllic state of watching the herbivores exist in this peaceful land. And I just am missing that during Lost World. It's too dark. I do think like there's that scene where they're hunting down dinosaurs and there's all this like cool tech on the trucks, and I kind of dislike that scene as well, even though, again, this is not disparaging The Lost World. I love all three movies. That's largely the point of this episode, is that they're all great. And the second one does do this incredible job at all the animatronics and all of this, like raptors, the threat, the T-Rexes, a baby T-Rex. There's so much, although I really do miss Roberta. I did get into it with a few people during this rewatch where, I'm sorry, I will always die on that hill. Roberta is the name of the T-Rex that stars in this franchise. I know fans call her Rexy. I know that the franchise has retconned calling her Rexy because everyone calls her Rexy. And I also know that people on set called her Rexy. I get it. I'm just telling you that the first name she was ever given was Roberta on a storyboard. So I like to think of Roberta as her legal name and Rexy as just the thing everyone calls her, her nickname. So everyone can happily call her Rexy. I would just like you to know that if she got a passport, it would say Roberta on it, and I will die on that hill. I will always call her Roberta. I do sometimes call her Rexy because that's a fun nickname. But I do miss Roberta in these two installations, I'd say the best thing that the Jurassic World part of the franchise does is recognize that she is the hero of these movies. She comes in, the T-Rex saves the day from other dinosaurs. That's her lot in life, poor Roberta. And I miss her during the second one and the third one because we're on the wrong island. And I yearn to get back to Roberta's island because as much as I like these T-Rexes and their kid, the thing that the third one does is kill off the T-Rex buck, which is so brutal because that's how you establish the Spinosaurus as like a kind of villainous version of a dinosaur. Like the dinosaurs are always just animals being animals. They're terrifying, and it's a creature feature because they are terrifying animals and they are apex predators. But they're never this malicious thing. Even like when the raptors are hunting you, they're just being raptors. Spinosaurus is this like turn in the franchise where it's like, oh, but then there's an evil dinosaur that wants to kill and kills one of the T-Rexes, which is like the mascot of the franchise. I would call it the spiritual hero, but it's definitely an interesting turn where we're exploring the darkness of the dinosaurs because Alan hates dinosaurs and we have to find a way to make the audience also kind of hate this dinosaur. So we do it by killing a T-Rex because Roberta established in the first one that T-Rexes are scary, but, you know, they're kind of like the sharks in Finding Nemo, you know? They're not really your foes. They're predators, and they're doing what predators do. All in all, what I am here to argue is that by going with it, by going with the action thriller that The Lost World is, which I think was an easier jump for people. I think people love The Lost World more than they love the third one is because it was an easier tonal shift from the first one. It doesn't feel like that much of a departure. It feels like still scary because there's still a lot of horror elements in all three. And because I classify the third one as a horror comedy, it is horror. It's just that it's being played for both scares and laughs. Which, I mean, give me a better horror comedy moment than that cell phone ring in the Spinosaurus. I have actually this week changed my cell phone ring to the Jurassic Park satellite cell phone ring. And I kid you not, the first time my phone rang, I looked around because I was like, wait, what? Do I have Jurassic on? I don't. That was my phone. But I do think that viewing these three movies this way can teach us so much about going with it. Enjoying the movie that is being given to you, even if it might not play to your expectations. And what I enjoyed so much about doing the live rewatches on Threads with this one was finding out how many people love The Lost World and how many people love Jurassic Park 3. For a lot of people, these are their favorites. And I think that's awesome because I think we can all say, like, the first one's a masterpiece. It's the best one. But it doesn't have to be your favorite. That's what I'm always here preaching, right? There's the objective. Objectively, that's a better movie. It's amazing. Objectively, the third one is a silly flick. But it can be your favorite. I enjoy Jurassic 3 so much. It is so silly. Watching the dinosaur get disappointed that these human snacks are covered in poop and they smell bad. And she's just like, no, thank you, I'm out of here. Hilarious. I'm sorry. Objectively funny. Again, you might not laugh. You might not want to be watching a horror comedy. That's fair. And I don't know what the marketing was at the time. Maybe they didn't market them well. And that's why people got really annoyed. They thought they were coming in for another Jurassic Park movie. And when they got was Jurassic Park, but what if it was funny? And not to say that the first one isn't also funny at moments, but it doesn't play for laughs the way Jurassic 3 works. And anyone who's listened to this podcast before knows how much I love a horror comedy. And I love an action adventure. So really, I love Lost World as well. For a long time, I felt kind of guilty about loving Lost World because people are like, well, it's not as good as Jurassic Park. And I'm just here to preach that these can all be enjoyed on their own merit. I think all three are extremely successful movies where like the first one set out to make like a really serious masterpiece movie and achieved it. The second one is like the sequel action thriller. Great. Achieved it. Third one, silly horror comedy. Achieved it. What's wrong with that? So I'm just here to invite everyone to kind of recalibrate if you don't enjoy the other ones and try to enjoy them from a different point. And again, you don't have to like it, but I would love to shift the idea that there is an objective failure on the part of these sequels because they're not the masterpiece that is Jurassic Park. That was never going to happen. And I love that people love all three. There's so much to love in each of these for different reasons. Now, nothing will ever top my love of the first one, but I love The Lost World and I love Jurassic Park 3, all for very different reasons. They give me different things. They are different movies, all these different dino flicks. And I love to preach the idea that you can go in to enjoy something, especially after last week when I did my episode on Superman. And those of you who listen will know that I got to discover the existence of CinemaSin. And I didn't know this existed, but it's apparently very popular in the film discourse world, which I don't think I'm a part of, I guess, even though I have a whole podcast about this. And I spend a lot of time on Letterboxd, but I can also see where a lot of the Letterboxd folks are getting their discourse now that I know this exists. So last week I started to be able to tell, oh, I'm seeing a lot of like repeat comments about the same thing that's wrong with this movie. Someone stepped in and said, I think what you're seeing is people who are into CinemaSin. And when I looked into it, I was kind of appalled. It was the opposite of everything I feel because I obviously love to discuss movies, but I don't want to ever go into a movie wanting to be more clever than the filmmaker, be more clever than the movie, fight the existence of what's being shown to me. I don't understand that. And I don't want to yuck anybody's yum. I definitely know there's different ways to enjoy things, but I would argue that going in to fight something that is art is maybe objectively not wanting to enjoy it. And this is kind of like, I had a friend this week tell me someone was their nemesis. And I was like, I don't have a nemesis. And I think maybe I have a nemesis. They don't know I exist. I'll never be as big as CinemaSin, especially because I think people do like to just feel superior to something. I think there's something about what I used to think was the film bro world was what I called it. And now I'm starting to think it's CinemaSin's world. It's this wanting to beat the movie, to make them pay for their mistakes. And I think it's having an effect on filmmaking. I think the audiences doing something like this and partaking in movies like this is making filmmakers scared to be wrong. And I will always preach that we've lost some of the magic of film because people need to be so correct. Oh, do you really want to argue about the jaw strength of a Spinosaurus versus a T-Rex? I could see how that would be interesting. I'm a science dork. I would love to have that discussion all day long, but it is not something that I think belongs in the discourse of whether Jurassic Park 3, a funny movie that is very silly science, has its merits as a film. And I think what's our responsibility as the audience as part of this discussion and collaboration between artist and audience? Do we owe them at least some open-mindedness of what they're trying to give us? Because if you do go into Jurassic Park 3 wanting really good science about dinosaurs, you're always going to be sorely disappointed. And yeah, you will come out being superior than the filmmakers if your stance is that they can't get dinosaurs wrong. I would argue they just have to get the comedic beats right. And they did that. There's people who don't find it funny at all. Again, totally fair. We don't all laugh at the same things, but objectively, the comedy beats are there. Whether they work for you, that's debatable, but I think these people don't want the comedy beats to work. And that's my point. It's if you want to go in there not laughing at the joke's not going to be funny. No matter how funny the joke might actually be. To each their own enjoyment. But really, I will take a stance on this podcast. I think this podcast, when it comes to films, will be staunchly anti this entire vibe of wanting to dissect the movie for its flaws. I'm happy to talk about flaws. I think I just did. I think the pacing of 3 is better than 2. I think the effects of 2 is better than 3. That's not to say that they don't work completely as movies, though. And I think that's the thing, is that you can critique something, but I don't want it to be bad. I'm not here fighting for the movie to fail. I'm just saying it wasn't perfect, and yet it still is so much fun to watch. Like, give me more of these, which we'll get into another day. Did Jurassic World continuing give us more of these? It gave us something different. It definitely is a different era of filmmaking. I think these 3 stand on their own as this beautiful trilogy. It gave me more Sam Neill, who was wonderful. And anyone who doesn't like the Alan dream sequence of Jurassic Park 3, I stand by your right to not like it. But I would like to dissect for some that thought it was silly. Yes, it was silly. You're watching a comedy, but also it was about how this man has unresolved trauma to the point of having crazy stress dreams. And it's legitimately funny and actually furthers the movie. I did have someone criticize, like, Jurassic Park 3 is terrible because it doesn't further the lore or the plot of Jurassic Park overall. I was like, well, that's not true, because, like, the Spinosaurus itself is adding to the lore. And also, like, that's not the responsibility of these movies. I would argue they're just another installment in this universe, and you can enjoy it that way. I'd love to wrap this up saying that I touched on everything about this trilogy. I probably didn't. There's a million things I could say. I mean, just the props alone. That single shaving cream can from the first movie is one of the greatest film props of all time. I got to see it at the Academy Museum in LA, and it's fantastic. I think there's not enough podcast time to talk about all the wonderful things that ever happened in the first Jurassic Park. It is truly movie magic. It takes you to this different world, and it gives you amazing characters and people and dinosaurs to root for, genuine thrills, genuine scares, stakes, and comedy, and really sweet moments. And it's hard to beat a movie like that. When people talk about it, I get so excited. I love doing these rewatches live on Threads because I really do like connecting with people who have genuine feelings about these movies, whether positive or negative. I am happy for people to say that something didn't work for them too, when it's with sincerity, because it's so exciting to me to hear the passion people have for these things. And there's just so much passion for this trilogy. And I was so pleasantly surprised, because when I finished the first one, I wasn't just worried that there was only going to be that one to talk about, but I was worried that people were just going to not kind of engage on the other 2. And instead, I think I found even more people having feelings about those, because the first one's easy to love. Everyone loves it. It's such an iconic movie. But I found so many people who said, Lost World is my favorite. Jurassic Park 3 is my favorite. And they were so excited to see somebody talk about it in not a bad way. And this is exactly what I'm after, is like trying to find these enjoyments, and the merits in these movies is so fun because it doesn't have to be perfect. It made a lot of people feel a lot of things, and a lot of people got a good thrill ride out of all of these movies, and we still watch them now. And yeah, Jurassic Park 3 has awful CGI, and yeah, I could do without that gymnastics scene in Lost World, but I still watch them every year. I will continue to do so because they always entertain me. So if you've made it this far, I invite you to tune in next week while we talk about Mission Impossible. All 7. It is 7, right? Gosh, I'm doubting myself now, live on recording. I've watched the first 5 Mission Impossibles a lot. Like a lot. I think it's the best action franchise ever made. You can argue with me about that on Threads if you'd like to. I've tried to find others. I don't think they beat it. So, with that, thanks for listening, and stay cool.